You ever look at something so small and so perfect, it makes your own hands feel like a pair of honey-glazed hams?
That's a very specific brand of self-loathing, Tiger. What are you poking at over there? It looks like a chess piece for a mouse.
Close. It's a decorative finial for a jewelry box I'm working on. I spent 3 days trying to carve something similar out of boxwood, and I ended up with what looked like a chewed-up toothpick and a band-aid on my thumb. Then I fired up the resin printer, and 10 hours later, the machine handed me, well, this. It's got scales the size of a grain of salt.
So, the master craftsman is admitting defeat to a vat of liquid plastic? That's big of you. But honestly, resin printing always felt like the dark arts of the maker world to me. It's messy, it smells like a chemistry lab, and if you touch it wrong, you're basically a hazard to yourself.
It is a bit like keeping a grumpy octopus as a pet. If you don't respect the process, it'll leave a sticky trail of regret across your entire shop floor. I remember my first week with the Saturn IV. I thought I could just pour the resin in like I'm filling a gas tank and hit go. I didn't realize that a tiny bubble or a cold room could turn a 12-hour print into a pancake of cured sludge stuck to the bottom of the tank.
A pancake of sludge. I'm guessing that wasn't the goal. But for real, let's peel back the curtain for the folks who are staring at these printers online and wondering if they need a degree in liquid dynamics to get a clean print. Where does a person even start before they're knee-deep in isopropyl alcohol?
It starts long before you touch the power button. It starts in the slicer. Most people think you just drop a 3D file in and click print, but with resin, you're essentially an architect designing the scaffolding for a building that's being built upside down.
Right, because the build plate moves up out of the liquid, so everything you print is basically hanging from the ceiling by its fingernails.
Exactly, and that's where the orientation talk comes in. If you print a flat surface parallel to the build plate, the suction force when that plate lifts is like trying to pull a rubber boot out of deep mud. Pop. Your print stays in the tank and your build plate comes up empty. You've got to tilt those models, usually about 30 or 45 degrees, so the printer is only peeling a tiny cross-section at a time. It's the difference between ripping off a giant Band-Aid and peeling a grape.
Okay, so we're tilting models to save them from the mud suction. But what about the supports? I've seen some resin prints that look like they're being eaten by a forest of plastic toothpicks. Is there an art to that, or do you just hit auto-generate and pray to the maker gods?
Between you and me, the auto button is a tempting siren, but you'll wreck your ship. I've had many a late night squinting at a screen, manually adding tiny supports to things I call islands. An island is just a part of the model that starts in mid-air. If the printer tries to cure a layer of resin that isn't attached to anything, it just floats away in the vat like a lost soul. You need to anchor every single starting point.
It sounds like a lot of prep work. I'm starting to see why you felt like your hands were hams. But let's talk about the resin itself. You mentioned shaking the bottle.
Oh, you have to. Resin is a cocktail of chemicals, and the heavy bits like to settle at the bottom if it sits for a few days. If you don't give it a good tumble, your print will come out looking like it's made of wet cheese. No structural integrity at all. But here's the kicker. After you shake it, it's full of bubbles. If you pour it straight in and print, those bubbles get trapped in the layers. You end up with pockmarks on your beautiful model.
So you shake it, then you have to let it meditate?
Pretty much. Let it sit for 10 minutes to catch its breath. And make sure the resin is warm. Cold resin is thick, like cold molasses, and it doesn't flow back under the build plate fast enough between layers. I've actually used a hairdryer on the side of my vat before just to get it up to room temperature.
A hairdryer. You really are a high-tech wizard, Tiger. Okay, let's say the print finishes. The plate rises out of the vat, and there is your beautiful, tiny resin creature dripping in toxic goo. This is the part that scares me. The post-processing. Can we walk through how not to poison the kitchen sink?
Rule number 1. The kitchen sink is forbidden territory. You need a dedicated dirty zone. When that plate comes off, the print is still green, meaning it's only partially cured. It's soft, it's delicate, and it's covered in liquid resin that'll give you a nasty rash if you're cavalier with it.
I've seen those wash and cure stations. Are they worth the extra shelf space? Or can I just use a bucket of alcohol and a sunny windowsill?
You can use a bucket, but you'll end up with a mess that looks like a crime scene. A wash station spins the alcohol around the print, getting into all those tiny crevices. It's essential for the detail we're talking about. If you leave liquid resin in a fold of a cape or the ear of a goblin, it'll cure there later and turn your high-definition print into a blurry blob.
And the hallowing thing? I read something in the Elegoo guide about putting holes in the model. That sounds like a great way to make a mess.
It's the opposite, actually. If you print a solid ball of resin, it's heavy, it wastes money, and it might even crack as it cures because the outside shrinks faster than the inside. So we hollow the model in the slicer. But, and this is the part I learned the hard way, if you don't put drain holes near the base, you create a vacuum. The printer tries to pull the build plate up, and the suction actually rips the bottom of the tank film.
Did you flood the machine, Tiger? Tell me you flooded the machine.
Let's just say I discovered that resin is remarkably hard to get out of a carpet. I had to tell my wife the new scent in the house was industrial ambition.
Industrial ambition. I'm stealing that for the next time I burn toast.
Once it's washed and dried, and I mean completely bone dry, it goes into the UV curing station. This is the final bake. It hardens the plastic and takes away that tacky feeling. If you do it right, the supports just snap off like dry twigs. If you do it wrong, you end up taking chunks out of your model and spending 3 hours with a needle file trying to fix the scars.
It sounds like resin printing is 20% machine work and 80% discipline. It's not like a paper printer where you just hit print and go get a coffee.
It's a craft, Alex. Just like woodworking. You have to learn the grain of the liquid, so to speak. But the payoff? I can print a replacement gear for a vintage clock or a miniature of my dog that shows his individual whiskers. For someone who loves detail, it's like having a magic wand, provided you don't mind wearing gloves and a mask to wave it.
I think that's the takeaway here. It's not easy, but it's attainable. You just have to be willing to fail a few times and maybe sacrifice a small patch of workshop carpet.
Exactly. Don't be afraid of the failed print bucket. Every misshapen glob of plastic is just a lesson in fluid dynamics you haven't mastered yet. At the end of the day, whether you're swinging a mallet or tweaking exposure times on a screen, the goal is the same, making something that didn't exist yesterday. And that's a pretty good way to spend a Tuesday.
Well said, Tiger. Even if you do smell slightly like a nail salon right now.
Worth it, every bit of it.